Well, good afternoon. We come to a close. All good things have to come to an end, right? Except heaven. We've had a wonderful study. It's been a blessing to me to refresh my mind on these things that I have studied in the past and be able to share with you today. I hope they've been a blessing to you this weekend. I have to express my deep gratitude for your invitation to me, for the elders and their care and concern for me, David and Peggy taking such good care of me. I have no needs that have not been fulfilled while I've been here with you. Most of all, your kind words of encouragement, your great attention, and your response to God's Word. That's such an encouraging thing to me. And it has lifted me up. And I'll go home with fond memories of this weekend and the time that we had together. We've talked a lot about heaven. We've talked a lot about some things that as Christians we want to engage in, things we want to cultivate in our lives as we prepare for that great and glorious day. We're going to close with just considering one of the Psalms. And it has to do with the theme of our weekend here. It's Psalm number 15. It's a short psalm, only 5 verses. We're going to go through it, and I'm going to give you just a little bit of a preview of what this psalm is about. Number 1, it asks a question and affirms a proposition. So there's a point to this psalm. There's a psalm of David, and we're going to listen to what he has to say. He asks a question, but there's an implied answer to the question. And then he's going to give a specific question. There's 4 points, and they're all going to be words that start with the letter R for memory's sake. And then there's a promise at the end, right? So let's begin. We'll read it. We'll just work our way through this. And remember that this is a psalm, so this would be a song that was sung in worship to God. And for the Hebrew people. And though I don't know that this song has ever been set to music in modern times, it certainly would be a song worth singing if I only knew music that could match with it. It's a beautiful psalm. Here's what it says. Jehovah. It just starts out with the word Jehovah. And then it asks this question. Who will sojourn in your tabernacle? Who shall dwell in your holy hill? Now, that's the proposition. And here are the 2 things that I want us to think about this question. Number 1, it is a desirable thing to dwell with Jehovah, to sojourn with Jehovah. But number 2, not everybody is qualified. So the answer by itself, who, implies that it's limited. Okay. Now the 4 parts that we're going to talk about, the 4 R's, are going to be 4 character traits of the person who's qualified to sojourn in Jehovah's tent and then dwell on his holy hill. But before we get to those character traits, let's just note this about this question also. There's 2 parts to being with Jehovah. There is the sojourn. Well, that's what we've been talking about. Walking on heaven's road. We're traveling with God in an itinerant way. That word sojourn, it had to do with people like Abraham who sojourned, but they didn't have a permanent home. The book of Hebrews says that these were looking for a city not made with hands. So they viewed themselves as itinerant, and yet they were sojourning with Jehovah's tabernacle. I'm reminded of Paul's letter to the Philippians, who were honored to be an official outpost of Rome. Right? The city of Philippi was a colony of Rome. That means it had very special privileges attached to it. But here's what Paul reminds them. Our citizenship is in heaven. We're just sojourning here. We're resident aliens here. We're itinerant in this earth. So their point of view was something higher. So we sojourn with Jehovah in His temple, and then we dwell with Him. We take up permanent residence in His holy hill, which implies peace, which implies security, right? It implies permanent blessings from God. So doesn't that kind of fit in with what we've been talking about? All right. So now we get to the character traits. Again, I emphasize that it has to do with character, not charisma, right? Those are two words that kind of sound alike. In fact, there's Greek words behind those. Character, the word character originally had reference to a chisel, right? So like a sculptor might chisel out an image in a piece of marble or granite. But as words develop, the word character began to take on a little bit different meaning. It didn't necessarily mean the chisel, but the mark left behind by the chisel. And eventually, it had to do with the image that was left behind by the chiseling. So when we talk about character, we talk about something that is crafted. Right? And we are talking about the image of God that we craft in our lives, that define who we are spiritually. Here's the word in the New Testament. In the book of Hebrews, chapter 1, we talk about Jesus, right, who sat down at the right hand of God, but He was the impress of the Father. Right, that's what it says. That's the word character. Jesus presented the character of God to mankind. So that's what we're talking about. Not charisma, right? Charisma is what attracts people, right? And there's nothing wrong with being a charismatic person, but that's being appealing to other people is not necessarily what's going to qualify you to dwell with Jehovah. It's not about how attractive you are. It's not about how much money you have, right? Here's what Jehovah said to Job. Who's ever lent money to me that I should have to repay them? I'm not indebted to anybody. You can't buy me, right? What do I need from you? I need nothing. So it's not about what we bring to God that's going to impress Him or qualify us. It's not our race. I've been thinking about this a lot lately, because there's a lot of racial tensions in various places. And I thought about this. You know what? We all end up the same color. Just bury somebody in the ground. We all end up kind of gray, ashy looking. Whatever's left of us. Oh, we're just God's bouquet right now on earth. But hey, we have a better day coming, right? And so nobody has a stake. Here's what Paul wrote. You're neither Jew nor Greek. You're neither male nor female. Oh, we have these characteristics now, but that doesn't mean anything to God. What matters is your character. Your character. So here's the 4 principles of character that we're going to talk about. Number 1, look at verse 2. Here's the one who's qualified to sojourn in your tabernacle, who shall dwell in the holy hill. He that walks uprightly and works righteousness and speaks truth in his heart. So number 1, righteousness. Righteousness is the first character trait of the one who's qualified. Now listen, none of us are righteous on our own. In fact, we are so flawed, right? And we recognize that we borrow righteousness from Jehovah, but that means we also have an obligation to reflect righteousness in our lives, to work, to chisel off the flaws and leave God's image behind. We're to work righteousness. That means there's something to do that is righteous, and there's something to avoid doing that is unrighteous. Notice he says to work righteously, to walk uprightly, and speaks truth in our heart. It's one thing to speak truth to everybody else. It's a whole another thing to speak truth to yourself. That's more important because we are the biggest deceivers of ourselves. So here's what integrity is speaking truth in the mirror, right? Not trying to deceive yourself, convince yourself of something that isn't true. That's integrity. So here's the first quality, righteousness. Righteousness. He that walks uprightly, that works righteousness, and speaks truth in his heart. So that's really just about dealing with truth. And God's word is the objective standard of truth. The next quality is restraint. Right? The person who is qualified to dwell with Jehovah is a person who exercises restraint, especially in regard to other people. Listen to what it says. Who slanders not with his tongue. You know what slander is? Just to speak against. It could even be true, but you say the truth in a way that hurts people. Or you lie about people, or you do things or say things to be spiteful. See, it's very easy to profess truth, and then find that one person that you can't not say something about. Right? So this is very fundamental behavior. He says, restraint. You slander not with his tongue, nor doeth evil to his friend. To his friend. Or neighbor, or even a stranger. Don't do evil. This is restraint. Or takes up a reproach against his neighbor. How quick are we to hear sometimes the negative things about somebody who we don't get along with, and we're so quick to listen to it and repeat it. Don't take it up. Don't even pick it up, is what it's saying. This is the person who's qualified to dwell with God, is the person who doesn't buy into that kind of thing. Isn't that an important character trait? Restraint. Restraint. It means putting the reins on our own emotions when things aren't really going our way, or with people that we really don't get along with. And sometimes we have to just turn the other cheek. Praise even when you're cursed. So those are important aspects. Restraint is a quality, a character trait that we need to possess. Next, the next character trait is the proper regard. right? Listen to what it says. In whose eyes a reprobate is despised, but who honors them that fear Jehovah. And he sweareth to his own hurt and changes not. Well, that kind of is a little problematic. I thought we were supposed to love everybody and even our enemies. And here it says we're supposed to despise the reprobate. Well, you can't take that out of the context. It's set in contrast to honoring the righteous. So here's what it has to do with. It's not about loving one person. It has to do with the value, the regard that you place on different things. So you might have friends that aren't actually helping you get to heaven. But if you spend more time with them than you do with the people who are good people, who are righteous people, who are trying to get you to heaven, then your regard is out of whack. That's what it's talking about. So you have a proper analysis of the things in your life and the people in your life, and you prioritize that which is good around you. That's important. You've got to be analyzing what's going on around you. And here it is, it comes down to this, that if you make an agreement with somebody, are you going to keep your word? Because your regard for integrity is more important than your own welfare. So this is about the person who prioritizes properly. It's more important to have integrity, to keep your word, to associate with good people than it is just to always be thinking about, yourself. So that's the third measure of character. The fourth then is what I call reciprocal behavior, or how you interact with other people. Look at this. Verse 5, he that puts not out his money to interest, nor takes reward against the innocent. Well, does that mean you can't make any interest on? No, even in the Old Covenant, it was possible to loan money and earn interest at it. In fact, Christ himself said in the parable of the talents, when the one guy with the one talent didn't do anything, he stuck it in the ground, he said, at least you could have put it in the bank and earned some interest. So this is not about just simply earning interest. What it has to do with is when you know somebody's in trouble, you'll only cast them a line to help them out of the quicksand for a price. Right? It's not following the golden rule. What's your price? What's your price for just being decent? That's what he's talking about. So you treat people and you look upon their need and you do things just because it's the good thing to do. Just because it's the right thing to do, because if you were in their shoes, you'd want somebody to do that for you. So that's why Christians are benevolent. It's not because they're obligated, although there's an obligation to be kind to other people. Right? Sometimes people come in and they say, well, the church is obligated to pay my bills. Well, you're obligated to work. Right? But when we do see somebody in dire need, we help them without recourse. Not because we're going to get anything out of it, but because we're good people, because God is the God who gives. And we want to be like Him. So, reciprocal behavior. We don't take advantage of people. We look for opportunities to help. So there's our 4 character traits. Number 1, righteousness. Righteousness. Right? Number 2, we said that there is restraint. We hold back, we suppress that natural feeling that can come out in times of tension. We have the proper valuation or regard for the things that are going on in our lives. And we operate with the people around us with the reciprocal, mutual love that helps without, waiting for the handout back. So those are the 4 big character traits that are highlighted here. And then finally, there's the promise. And here's what we've been talking about all weekend. He that does these things shall never be moved. Like the tree planted by rivers of water. We used to sing that song. I cannot be moved. Right? When you sit down with God in His holy hill, there is a power, a resolve, a steadfastness, and a peace of mind that overwhelms. And it allows people like Paul to write to the Philippians from jail, right? From the cold, hard prison cell that he was in, that with God there's a peace that passes all understanding. That's our little study in Psalm 15. And we'll close now with an invitation song. I hope that you have been blessed by this weekend together. Let's stand and sing this last invitation song. And if there's any need, we encourage you to come and stand and